Hey up lads, hey up loves, it's the Yorkshireman here, and today we're going to be doing a little video on my favourite priest, Mr Giles Fraser. Now, he is on the Newsnight programme and he's doing his take of the week, and he's talking about Jeremy Corbyn. Now, this was all for the snap general election that we had last year in 2017, and this video doesn't really need much explanation, because he just has this brilliant way of handing it all over in a little tied package. But what I'm going to attempt to do is just pull the ribbon of that package and offer my 2 pennies as usual. So just have a watch of this while I stick the kettle on.
Here's Giles Fraser with his take of the week.
I do love pottering around in the vicarage garden, doing the weeding, helping make things grow. And when I'm out here with time to think and my hands covered in earth, I do feel I get a wider perspective on the things that matter most in life. The importance of everyone living on this planet peacefully. The importance of there being enough to go round. Big, basic things.
I love when they have these little intro films before they have the sit-down interview. Like, it's just an opportunity to do this little setup bit, which obviously is not real at all, and for some young media graduate to do this amazingly edited bit of cinema before we actually talk about the politics. But I would rather you just sit down and tell me what you think, rather than having all of this stuff.
Do you know, maybe that's why I'm a fan of Jeremy Corbyn. He's not like one of those politicians that's just stepped out of an investment bank, and he doesn't look like he's been on one of those media courses either. He reminds me of one of the 17th century diggers who go on about the earth being a common treasury for all. And I really like that. He seems like an ordinary bloke, concerned with ordinary people. He's often got the lowest expenses of any other parliamentarian, and for me he's clearly got the well-being of the poor and the disadvantaged very much at heart.
Well, after all that, I think you're going to need to dip into your bag and grab some more shit out.
And you know what? I trust him. I trust him not to start stupid wars. I trust him to try and get rid of nuclear weapons. And I trust him not to represent the interests of big business.
I love the irony here of how he's doing this garden. He's talking about Jeremy Corbyn. That literally looks like a socialist garden, because there's fuck all in it.
Look, I know he's behind in the polls, but the pollsters have got it wrong a lot of times before. And I think he's a decent bloke who's making the case with quite a lot of dignity.
Unlike you, Giles. I mean, whose idea was this? To just say to you, right, we're going to get you to try and sell Jeremy Corbyn to the country, but we want you to just sort of fuck about in this garden and plant a rose bush while you're doing it, because it's going to really hammer that point across.
And politeness. And I think people should give him a chance. The rose has always been popular with socialists. I know this one's a bit battered.
Nah, I'd say that's about right. Socialist, battered, weak, fuck all on top of it, nothing to show. Yeah, that's about right.
They're remarkably hardy plants, and they'll survive and flourish in the most difficult of circumstances. I think Jeremy Corbyn will too.
And off he walks into the sunset. Now, I mean, obviously I could have broken that little intro film down point by point and addressed every one of them, but for the purposes of time and humour and getting to the good stuff, I just act like a bit of a dickhead. But now we're going to get to the actual conversation that he has with Andrew Neil, and Andrew Neil does not let these people get away with it, and we're going to see that now, so let's have a look.
Where has Mr Corbyn's brand of socialism worked?
Well, I hope it's going to work here.
So there we are, straight out the trap with a brilliant humdinger like that one. Where has socialism worked? Now, Obviously, he can't answer it because it hasn't worked anywhere. So instead, he just goes, "Oh, well, I hope it's going to work here." It's not going to work here, Giles. It's not going to work here. It won't work anywhere. It hasn't worked anywhere. And if you don't believe me, just look to any country that has had socialism at the core of its government and just look at how skinny the people are, or how upset and miserable the people are, or how dead the people are.
But where has it worked elsewhere?
Well, I think it's a brand for the future. Actually, I think we're in a time when we really need someone to start talking about common ownership, about a preference for the poor. I think we desperately need someone to start talking about how we make peace around the world.
Oh, fucking hell no. Now, that moment there, when he starts talking, it's literally like one of those nightmares where you dream that you're giving a speech or that you're on stage and you suddenly realise you don't know what the lines are. You don't know what you're doing there. You don't know what's going on. It's also a bit like when a kid has to give a report in front of the class and they've not done the homework, they've not done any research, so they just get up there and wing it, and you can just see the cracks forming and everything just slowly falling away and disintegrating. It's another brain meltdown moment there.
Well, I think it's
nobody does it better.
But there's no precedence for this?
Well, I think he's the person that could do it. I mean,
But it hasn't been tried anywhere else?
The answer you're looking for there, Giles, is yes, it has been tried. There's been lots of politicians in this country and many other countries who have tried a lot of those things, and it's not as easy as waving a magic wand, like it says in the Bible. But just to say it, like, I was one of the people who was on board with the whole Jeremy Corbyn bandwagon. I even went to see him speak when he came to my city. You know, there was no one who was a bigger supporter of Jeremy Corbyn than me when he first came along. But once he got his feet under the table, he started talking about all this weird socialism stuff. He started sounding more and more regressive. And then when you read the 10 pledges of the Labour Party and he said he wanted to put more social justice into society, that was when I realised he wasn't the man I thought he was. So he's not really bringing anything new to the table in terms of what Giles wants, but what he is bringing to the table are a lot of very regressive, bad ideas that are going to be terrible for this country, and for some reason people like Giles don't seem to notice that. You can tell he doesn't really know what's going on. Look.
There isn't anybody quite like Jeremy Corbyn I can't think of, and no, I can't think of anybody quite like Jeremy Corbyn.
I could think of a few people, but I'm not going to mention any communist names, sorry. But I just love this. In response to the question about where has socialism worked, isn't there anybody who's tried to get peace and help the poor and talk about common ownership before? His response is, there isn't anybody quite like Jeremy Corbyn. I don't even know in which universe, in which of the many multiverses, on which spectrum, that answered any kind of question, really. But let's carry on.
It hasn't been a popular sort of politics, and I'd like to see it more popular.
Yeah, there's a reason that it's not been very popular, Giles, and the fact that you want to see it more popular makes me a little bit worried about you. I mean, how many brown shirts does a priest have in his cupboard? Sounds like the start of a joke, but this is not funny.
So you want the country to put faith in a man who's been in politics for 40 years or so, but never been in power, with a blueprint that has no precedence?
Yes. I would like to see something change. I mean, that's what it is. That's what it is to change. And I think that things have got so wrong in this country.
Yes, they have, Giles. They've gotten so wrong that there are people going on television saying that they hope that socialism is going to come to this country. That is how wrong things have got.
And so out of whack that we're desperate for something different. And I trust him, you know. I trust him that he has the interests of ordinary people at heart. As I say in the film, I trust him that he's not going to start stupid wars, or he's going to try and reduce dependency on nuclear weapons, that he's not in the pocket of his business.
Well, you say that, but it's
really important.
So you literally have nothing to say, that you're going to go back and just repeat everything that we've already watched in your little cinematic trailer at the start of the video. I mean, you literally have nothing to give us apart from all of that shite and saying, well, I hope he does this and I've got a good feeling about this. You've got no argument, you've got no facts, you've got no figures, you've got no statistics, you can't answer simple questions. So to me, this is where, if I were Andrew Neil, I'd look to the camera and say, thanks for tuning in, folks. Have a good night. Don't forget to turn off your tellies.
it's not Labour policy to end the nuclear deterrent.
No, I said I was rather careful in my construction there. I said I trust him to argue for it. I mean, he clearly wants to end it. He has a difference with his party, and I'm with him on that.
But he'll be elected on a manifesto of keeping the nuclear deterrent.
Yeah, well, I'm.
So why would you trust him?
My faith's in him.
Why would you trust a man to be elected on a part of the manifesto he doesn't agree with?
Well, my instinct is that he is much more anti-nuclear than the rest of his party, and I'm putting my faith in him on that.
Yeah, faith and instinct isn't really the best thing when we talk about politics, and especially when we talk about nuclear deterrence. Now, this was a big one that came up a lot, where people were asking Jeremy Corbyn, would you use nukes? And he was saying, I want to move towards a world where nobody has any nukes. And again, in principle, I understand it, and I think, yeah, it would be better if nobody had any nuclear missiles. But, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to do it. You're not going to be able to get to a point where everyone agrees and follows through, and gets rid of the nukes. That's just not going to happen. We are where we are, and we just have to deal with it. But if somebody launched a nuclear missile at us or anybody, you'd want somebody who would be prepared to be able to make that decision. You can't just sit around and sing Kumbaya and hope that that'll divert the missile into the sea. That was one of the big cruxes of that argument, and I also understood it from that side of things. So it's all well and good wanting to be anti-nuclear. I don't think I've met anybody who's pro-nuclear weapons, who's like, yes, we need more of them, I fucking love nukes. And I think most human beings are intelligent enough to realise that if a nuclear war kicked off, it wouldn't last very long. It would ultimately be pointless. And we seem to have moved into an era where large-scale war isn't on the agenda, but you never know what's around the corner. But let's hope that that's not going to happen. And if it does, let's hope that we have somebody in charge who's prepared to take a stand for the country and for the people, and not just sit round and hope it's all going to turn out nicely. Because that isn't how war works, unfortunately.
Let me bring you back, though, to some of the issues that Mr Corbyn's raised. Before you can redistribute wealth to the poor, you need to create it. What evidence do you have that Mr Corbyn knows how to create wealth?
Well, I mean, the other way of looking at it is to say that we'd be a more equal but a poorer society. I'd be happy with us being a more equal but a poorer society.
Oh, fucking would you now, Giles? Well, I could probably say that most people in this country, and certainly myself, would not be happy if we were a poorer society. The point is that we want to grow, we want to get better, we want more money, we want more jobs. Otherwise, how the fucking hell are we going to help the poor, Giles? If we're a poorer country, you fucking fat idiot.
That's an election-winning slogan?
No, it's not an election-winning slogan.
Yeah, you're too fucking right it's not.
I mean, I'm not standing for election. I'm saying I'm happier.
But even if we wanted to be poorer, if you're going to redistribute wealth, you need to create it to do it. How do we know that Mr Corbyn knows how to create wealth?
Well, no, Mr Corbyn wouldn't be the one that's creating wealth. I mean, it's the wealth creators out in the country that say wealth.
But he'll set the conditions.
Absolutely, but it's not just. We have this obsession that that we have to let these people. Who apparently make the money. I mean, actually, wealth is not something that's sort of made by entrepreneurs.
I'm sorry? What? Wealth is something that is not made by entrepreneurs. Giles, were you paid to do this? I mean, did somebody pay you to go on this programme and just talk like a fucking imbecile just to make Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party look more stupid than they already did? entrepreneurs don't make wealth. People with creative, innovative ideas don't contribute anything to society, don't make money, don't do anything. Well, who makes the wealth then? Fucking Rumpelstiltskin?
Wealth is in the world. It's the resources that we have and that we all have in common.
I don't know what you're talking about now, Giles. Do you mean like gold or silver or diamonds? Is that what you think when he says wealth? You think the actual tender, the money, the precious material, that's the wealth. It's not the fact that somebody comes up with a brilliant idea and then puts it into practice and that generates more and more money, and then ultimately you can spend more to make more, and then it just slowly builds up like that. I don't know what you're talking about now, because certainly one thing that we don't have in common is creativity and intelligence and entrepreneurship. That is something that we do not share. Except when you're in a communist country, because then it belongs to everybody, doesn't it? That's why you want socialism, so that you can take credit for things that other people do, gifted people do. Well, or maybe I'm just guessing now, but that's what it says in my head anyway.
And I'm sort of suspicious of the idea that we need to be totally in hock to entrepreneurs.
No, I wasn't asking. I simply asked you how Mr Corbyn would create it. But let me ask another one. You...
so sorry to be so childish, but just look at that fucking head. Look at those ears. It's like Wallace from Wallace and Gromit, or fucking something from Popeye. It's just... Oh, sorry for that little moment of childishness there, but I've had quite a lot of beer.
Mentioned several times that Mr Corbyn was a man of peace. How does that square with his past ties to Hamas, Hezbollah and Sinn Féin IRA?
Well, that's very straightforward. I mean, in order to make peace, you have to talk to the bad guys.
Yeah, but the problem is you can't just talk to people all the time, because some people don't want to talk, and some people you can talk to until you're blue in the face, but they won't stop being bastards. And that's when you need to get your bollocks out. You need to put them right there on the table, and you need to say, look, if you carry on doing what you're doing, and if you want to fuck with us, then we are going to fucking destroy you, right? Proper Winston Churchill style. And as nice as Jeremy Corbyn is, I don't think he would ever get his nuts out on the table or go out in the car park and sort things out like a man. I think he would probably stick on the kettle and make some green tea.
That seems to be absolutely
But when he
straightforward.
talked to Sinn Féin IRA, it wasn't to make
them
peace.
friends and all of this.
It wasn't to make peace. It was, he essentially wanted the IRA to win. He wanted a united Ireland.
Well, there's a lot of people that want a united Ireland.
Yeah, but they want to do it democratically. They don't want to blow things up in order to get the point across. I think that if you have to blow something up or blow yourself up to make a point, then it's probably not a very good point, and you are a bit of a twat.
Why does that make him a man of peace if you want the other side?
No, I didn't say that's what made him a man of peace. You brought that up.
Well, I'm judging him by his past.
I think he is a man of peace.
But if he supports Hamas and Hezbollah?
No, he's prepared to talk to, and in fact, I think we don't do this enough in this country. We're all so high and mighty. We talk to people behind the scenes, of course, but we won't be upfront about the fact that we talk to people.
But he wasn't talking to but hold on, he wasn't talking to Hezbollah to say you need to make peace with Israel, you need to get round the table. He didn't talk to Hezbollah for that.
Of course, that's the long-term aim of the contacts that he would have made.
The short-term aim was to drive Israel into the sea. Does that sound like a man of peace?
Yeah, on a serious note here, Jeremy Corbyn and a lot of people who are close to him don't seem to be people who are what you'd call peaceful. They want the underdogs to win. They want the little guy to win. And in a lot of these instances, the little guys tend to be terrorists. They tend to be people who don't want peace, they want control. There's a big difference between those two. There's someone who fights for peace and there's someone who fights for top spot. the crown, the throne, however you want to put it. And, you know, in a Star Wars film, yeah, I can get behind that. But in real life, they're not rebels, they're just terrorists. And let's be honest, and let's be very, very clear, within this new Labour Party, there is a very strong undercurrent of anti-British and particularly anti-Jewish sentiment that doesn't exactly square with the idea of caring about the real average British person or the idea of being peaceful at all, really. Does it, Giles?
It's not his aim.
I'm not saying it was his, but
Absolutely
I'm not saying that was his.
aim.
I'm saying that was Hezbollah and Hamas.
So the question is, do we keep our hands clean by never talking to the baddies, or do we make peace and dirty our hands by doing it, and actually there's a much better outcome for everybody?
To the baddies. Oh, fucking hell, Giles. It's like a gigantic child sitting on the sofa. The baddies, what, like Cobra? Is that what this is now? Is it fucking G.I. Joe? It's G.I. Joe who beats Cobra the enemy, fighting to save the day. They'll never give up, they're always there, fighting for freedom of our land and air. Jeremy Corbyn, international hero. But if I could just be serious for 1 second. So his options are: we don't ever talk to the enemy, or we make peace with them, as if those are the only two options, as if we've never tried to make peace with people in the past. The problem is certain people, you can make peace with them and then they can double cross you. You know, Hitler did that a lot with a lot of people who he made these peace treaties with, and then he just rolled the tanks into the country anyway. See, if people want power, they will take it no matter what, even if you've agreed to have peace between you. They don't give a fuck. Some people don't want peace, Giles. So if they don't want peace, then we have to do something else. If they want to fight, then we have to fight. And we have to be better than them. And I'm sorry to say, but Jeremy Corbyn doesn't really fill me with much confidence, especially when he seems to be backing the enemy most of the time.
You expect, because you said you don't believe the polls, and there's often very good reason for that, do you expect to see the polls starting to narrow?
I'm not an anorak like you, Andrew. I don't watch the polls all the time.
Now, to be fair to Giles here, I don't watch the polls either. I tend to dip in and out of social media. I'll often pick up the paper or flick the news on and just get a sort of general vibe of what's going on. A lot of the time, social media tends to be the best place to find out, and alternative media, because of course most papers and news channels will always be pushing their particular agenda, and sometimes it can be very one-sided. And I'm sure you, my lads and lasses out there, will have had one of these moments yourself where you just, for a moment, you step back and you see the big picture and you can see it for what it really is. But if you've got a dog in the fight, so to speak, or you've got a very strong ideological position, then you might ignore certain things that are inconvenient to you and your cause. And by doing that, and this leads into the second problem, there are some people who will literally craft their own version of reality. And I think there's a big problem with that. Because when you're living in your world and you're not engaging in the real world, then certain things can happen and certain results come out, and you act genuinely shocked as to how it's happened. And maybe if you'd spent more time engaging with people and other ideas apart from your own, then maybe it wouldn't be as much of a shock. And maybe if you did, you might be in a better position to try and persuade people to your side of the argument. And that ain't going to happen if you shut yourself off from real life.
I'm not.
Yeah, but if you don't narrow, you're going to be wrong. He won't win.
I'm just like I'm taking the Leicester City defence on this.
What does that mean?
What does that mean? Brilliant. Absolutely. Yeah. Please tell us, Giles. What does that mean?
Well, you know, last no one thought Leicester City could win anything, and you know, they managed to do it against all the odds. And I think there may well be a movement, and Jeremy Corbyn might surprise a lot of people. Okay, the polls indicate otherwise, but you know, the pollsters really have been wrong a lot.
They'd have to be really wrong this time, wouldn't they?
There'll be a lot of egg and a lot of faces.
Sure
wouldn't
would. And that may be no bad thing either. Giles Fraser, thank you.
Well, I'll give you that one, Giles. He certainly surprised me. He surprised me because when he came along, I thought he was going to be a genuinely different, breath of fresh air politician. And he certainly is different, but not in the way that I was hoping. See, when I wanted somebody different, I didn't want them to be so far on the other side of the political spectrum that they brought in this weird undercurrent of prejudice and a different kind of snobbery and a strange sense of racism and certainly a big sense of anti-Semitism. And he has brought a movement with him. It's called Momentum. You know them? The people who go and they force Labour MPs out of their seats. Now, somewhere where me and Giles agree is that, like him, I want a change. I want there to be a change, but changing to socialism is certainly not a good idea, and it's not going to be good for the people in this country. It's not going to be good for anyone in this country, and I can guarantee you, Giles, it certainly won't be good for you, matey. It's a strange thing that there are so many young and old people who are jumping on the bandwagon of this socialist idea, and I just think that a lot of it is because they don't know any different from what we've had already. It has been established for quite a long time. I suppose that's why they call it the establishment. But people, lads, lasses, if you're listening, there are other ways that we can bring about change, and giving power over to a socialist/communist government is not the best way of doing it. Believe me. And if you don't believe me, just have a look at some of these numbers here. Just let those numbers sink in for 1 second. Now, obviously, this is just my opinion, but what I would say to any of you lads and lasses listening out there, just look up socialism and look up communism and weigh it against capitalism and just see if your opinions are still the same afterwards. I want a change too. I want a better change, a change that's going to benefit everybody in this country, no matter who you are or where you're from. I want this country to be the best that it can be. Now, obviously, Corbyn didn't win the election, and Giles Fraser, I suppose, did end up with egg on his chin. Or probably more in his mouth, I would say. And again, I don't think Jeremy Corbyn is a bad person. I just think he's an idiot. And I don't think he would be a very good Prime Minister. And I think that people who are judging him just based off his personality and this reputation that he's got, rather than his policies and his principles and the people around him, then you end up with Giles Fraser, I guess. But anyway, that's the end of that video. Thank you very much for watching, lads and lasses, and please like and subscribe below, and I'll see you again in the next video. Ta-ta!